Hey YouTube, we are back with another tier list. This is our bugs tier 10. We have just gotten the new Warbond with the Halt and the Reprimand and the Constitution. I think it was like last week now for Freedom Day. Yeah, I've basically done this tier list, like recorded it 3 times now before posting. Just basically every time I was about to post it or like get it edited and everything like that, another update was announced. Another Warbond was announced. Another weapon was coming soon after. So we're finally getting around to it. Now we're doing bugs. I think we're going to just start off immediately with the Halt. Halt is absolutely like an A tier weapon. If you guys are frustrated with the swapping of modes for the stun and flechette, there's basically been some new tech that's been discovered and been spread around the community. If you bind your weapon, like wheel, I'm forgetting the weapon here. I actually can open it up in game real quick. It is the change binds, combat, and then you go down to open weapon wheel. If you bind this to a button, you make it press, okay? And then you do the weapon wheel right, which is to swap the other one. And you also make it the same bind and press. It will automatically switch it with just one key press. So you can actually swap back and forth really easily, which is really cool. There's some downsides to it, because if you pick up any other weapon and you press that button, it will automatically do that, which could be whatever is to the right. So for the autocannon, it would be swapping between semi and full auto, which is not very, Henderson. But if you, are using a different support weapon that has like something that you do not want swapping, it can be a bit awkward. But yeah, Halt is very good. Good against your medium pen targets. Obviously not as, effective versus like your tier 1s as like the Breaker Incendiary or the Cookout. But I think it has like a lot of utility in it, and it has like a decent amount of firepower. As far as the primary goes, I think it's like an A tier. It's like very strong. A little bit of a drawback in the sense that like, you're not able to kill like 10 small enemies in like one shotgun pump like the Cookout, but, very, 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 very strong. Going to the Spray and Pray, I think it's like middling at the moment. I still feel as if it has, the ergonomics are still not very good. The magazine size is still not that big, and its damage is only comparable to the Incendiary at this point, which is good, don't get me wrong, but I still feel as if it needs more to really compete with the other shotguns that are around it. I don't like having a CQC weapon that doesn't have good ergonomics. It's really weird. And then forcing yourself to have to wear the Viper Commando armor just for your primary, not a great fit, especially when you have the Cookout available to you that has like perfect handling and can just do the same thing. Or the Incendiary Breaker, just tap fire a little bit more, and the Incendiary Breaker will kill significantly more enemies. All right, Cookout goes all the way to S tier. It's absolutely insane. No doubt in my mind. Obviously, it doesn't do as much like durable damage as like other weapons around it, but it's just so good at killing like your tier 1 enemies and stuff along those lines that I can't not put it in S tier. It's so good. Just having like secondary or support weapon that can deal with the few enemies that this thing can't absolutely melt, is like a good option. Because like even still, like with a medium pen target like the Hive Guardian, you just land a pellet or 2 and it will burn to death within like 2 ignites. So it's like really good for that. A Brood Commander, you could just have a secondary or a support weapon that just deals with them, or just like push them back. So it's like really strong. Cinder Breaker is still S tier, just like I've been telling people, tap fire. Like seriously, tap fire maybe as fast as you can fire the Cookout, or a little bit, even a little slower. Just ignite bugs on fire and let them come towards you. And you shouldn't be like full autoing until they're like actually on top of you, right? Or closer. Right? I just see so many people that just waste all their ammo and then are like hogging all the ammo resupplies, and like for some reason they just don't want to tap fire. They just want to full auto. And like, fair enough, but like bring a supply backpack if you're going to do that, basically. It's still a fantastic weapon. Just the ammo economy is its only downside, but I think with enough ammo management or stratagem choice like the supply backpack, you're just fine. Slugger, still a solid option. I do enjoy using it from time to time, but especially now that we have the Halt, I think the Slugger is having even a harder time, existing in the current sandbox. I've been hearing a lot of discussion of like, why don't they just combine the Slugger and the Punisher together now that the Halt has like dual fire mode, which is like totally fair. And the Slugger just basically needs like more pens, similar to like maybe the Senator, or just more damage, because, if you're going to use a weapon like the Slugger, why not use just like the Dominator or the Halt, right? These are weapons that either have more damage per shot, or they have a situation of just like being able to like deal more damage per second, or have more stagger, or like, there's just a bunch of things. So it just needs more love. Punch of Plasma recently got its projectile fixed, which is nice, but it's not performing super well in a lot of situations. I just feel like it's bullying enemies around, but it's not exactly killing a lot of enemies as much as I would like it to. They recently gave it 2 more rounds in the magazine, which is nice, but it also has an ammo economy issue that, you know, not all primary weapons are really running into as much as the Punisher Plasma. So maybe getting more backup magazines or just more damage in general. I would like to see just more damage. It would help it a ton. Okay, going to the Punisher, I would say it's like a low A. I do enjoy using it. I think it's like a fantastic weapon for like newer players or players that maybe don't have the Halt yet. If they just want to bully some enemies, and it does like really good upfront damage and good like durable damage and stuff along that nature. But the Cookout really is just its bigger brother when it comes to bots. Like it's just, you know, or bugs. You should just use the Cookout. It really is just the better one. Regular Breaker, I'm going to put it like right next to the Breaker Spreading Prey. It's got good DPS, you know, upfront damage is really good. And like, you know, you could just dish out damage, but the issue is that like ammo economy wise, you're not looking too hot, and the incendiary weapons are a thing that exist in the game. So it's kind of just difficult to always use. We'll bring Luna into this while we continue. Dominator, I've been like, Luna is currently moving my keyboard. Thank you, Luna. Thank you. Oh, and now she is zoomed in. Luna, you are being way more distracted than normal today. Okay, so the Dominator has a little bit of an issue existing in the current meta, just because like you have all these like better options sometimes at like killing these like larger enemies, and your hunters and so on and so forth are more the pain in the ass that you're going to be running into in tier 10. If you do need something that deals with a brood commander or, you know, a ball spewer or something along those lines, these are great options, but I'm not always bringing it just because of like handling and so on and so forth. You know, it is dropping a little bit because they've just been buffing so many other weapons that can do what the Dominator does, but even better in other situations, such as the Purifier. We'll just quickly swap over to that. Purifier is absolutely insane. Really, 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 really good option. They gave it so much damage on that 1 second charge, and if you aren't charging it, just the panicked, you know, rapid fire that you can do if you you know, like have a fast trigger finger, is fantastic. Ammo economy is really good on it. AoE damage is really good. Medium to explosive damage is really good. Just a fantastic weapon. I can take out Spore Spears with it. I take out like the Spore Shroom, the Shrieker Nest with it. It's like 6 shots or something like that. It's crazy. It's crazy how much damage this thing can do. It is very, very, very good. Next, going with the Torture. I think the Torture is an amazing weapon. It is literally just the flamethrower support weapon in the primary slot. It actually makes the regular flamethrower blush a little bit, because it does most of the damage that the flamethrower does, and it does everything else it can do, like going through Armor Pen 4, you know, laying traps on the ground for your bugs to like walk into, and just has way better handling than the actual support flamethrower. So there's many times where like, hey, I want to bring a flamethrower. I don't actually bring the flamethrower. I just bring the Torture instead. It's really strong. And if you pair that with like a support weapon that can maybe deal with more ranged enemies, it like pairs really, really, really well. Okay, Blitzer, solid A. It's your reliable infinite ammo shotgun, tons of stagger. It's a little bit quirky in how it aims, and there are times where, you know, a bush will have it'll have a problem with getting through a bush or getting around a dead body, or like maybe it'll track to the wrong part of the enemy, and it'll take 3 times as many shots. Like I'm looking at you stalkers, sometimes it one taps them to the mouth, and sometimes it's like hitting the praying mantis arms or the shoulders or something like that, and it takes way more shots, but still a fantastic weapon, even though it has that quirkiness, just because infinite ammo and bugs are typically in the right range. Scorcher, very like well-rounded, solid weapon, especially now that they've given it the full auto modifier. But my problem now is that, and they gave it 5 more rounds in the magazine, which is nice, and gave it a little more ammo, just a little bit. My issue at this point is just I want to see it have more ammo in the back, like in supply. Like I feel too often we just don't have the ammo necessary that I feel like it needs to, and you just go through your ammo so fast, especially with the full auto. Dude, why can I hear commercials now? I didn't used to be able to hear commercials so often. It's kind of weird. It's really weird. Anyways, the Eruptor basically is just a worse crossbow in a lot of ways. I'm still going to put it in A tier just because it has a lot of AoE potential, especially if you do the stratagem like animation cancel. If you bring up your stratagem arm, like your stratagem window, in between firing, you can shoot it a hell of a lot faster than you normally can, which is like really impressive. But at the same time, you could just use a crossbow and do more reliable damage and not have to worry about it as much. The Eruptor still has like really good utility, which is why it's also an A tier, and it can one-shot like ball spears if you place the shots right. So shrapnel's great, but you know, I would prefer using the more reliable damage form of the crossbow. And there's no surprise I'm putting the crossbow as like the top weapon of the current sandbox. Purifier, Cookout, so on and so forth is like very close behind to some degree, right? Doesn't quite have the same utility that the crossbow has, which is really good. Diligence Counter Sniper is another A tier weapon if you've not tried it out since they've given it 200 damage. It has a little bit more stagger, a little more durable damage. It's like a one-tapping machine if you're fairly accurate with it. Warriors, Brood Commanders, I think are 3 shots to the head. Very good weapon for just all-around mobbing if you have a little bit of distance with you. And if you get used to the sway of it, you can even take out like hunters pretty damn reliably with good target acquisition. Highly recommend giving it a try. It's basically just your baby AMR, but good. Give it a try. It's good. Constitution Rifle, bit of a meme. Let's be honest. The bayonet has like a little bit of quirkiness, and you can actually like stab through the armor of a behemoth charger. We have a couple clips on the channel where I've stunned a behemoth charger, walked up to it, stabbed it in the leg like 7 times or so, and he falls over and dies. Basically, it's very similar to like the old flamethrower mechanic and the old throwing knife mechanic, where certain things can just go through the leg of the charger, like the armor, and it's like hitting the squishy, orange bits. Maybe they'll fix it in the future, who knows, but it is modified by the Viper Commando armor, and it's like kind of just a fun weapon to use. It's kind of hard. It's got a lot of ammo in reserve, but I think for bugs, it is not a great weapon to use. Like, I'm debating almost putting in D tier, but the only reason I won't is because at least it has fairly good damage, fairly good as long as you're accurate, and it has medium pen, and you get 99 rounds, which is actually pretty solid as far as ammo economy. So maybe we'll put it like C-. It's kind of just I want to make the mission a little bit harder for myself kind of weapon. If it had stripper mags, so you could reload 5 rounds at a time, a little faster, I'd probably put it around B tier, but there's other things holding it back. Diligence, solid light pen weapon. They've also been updating the damage on this, but there's a lot of times where I would rather just use an AMR, or sorry, not an AMR, the Diligence Counter Sniper, or use an auto rifle. It's in an awkward spot where it doesn't have medium pen, and it's fairly slow fire rate, but if you have decent accuracy, you can use it and like tap weak spots pretty reliably. So for the right person, I think it's fairly good, but you definitely need a high degree of accuracy to make it very proficient. Liberator Carbine is essentially just like, in my opinion, just kind of like a worse off Liberator. They have been like trying to give it like faster, like a faster reload, and just like in general, like a little bit more of a buff compared to the normal Liberator, but I still feel as if there's more situations where I just use the normal Liberator because it has less recoil and in general, just a little bit easier time like hitting those weak spots, and because you can just full auto it. And I typically don't need the full auto capability of the Liberator Carbine when I'm playing bugs, unless you're just kind of going Rambo, I guess. Liberator Penetrator, absolutely solid bug weapon now. They've updated the damage. They've given it a 45 round magazine. It's just good. It's a very easy to use assault rifle with a decent like damage per second and stuff like that. I do recommend checking it out. It has improved a lot over the time, and they obviously have given this weapon to the Ballistic Guard Dog, and it's quite good as well. Highly recommend it. Liberator Concussive, I think, is like a solid B tier. I wouldn't really change it from its current place. It's fairly good damage, good CC, 60 round magazine. It isn't shown in this picture, but it is a 60 round magazine. So if you want to be that team support player that just like pushes back the horde, it's quite good at that. Yeah, it definitely has its place now versus the Pummeler, whereas before the Pummeler was just like the better weapon. Now I would say the Liberator Concussive is the better weapon out of the two. The Adjudicator is our next to go into A tier. I think it is a very solid medium pen weapon. It follows the kind of the cliche of just like medium pen, good for tier 10, good ammo supply. It's got 5 more rounds in the magazine from our last video, so now it's got 30. They've been reducing the recoil on it, but as long as you like crouch, it has like very manageable recoil. Solid weapon. With good target acquisition, you will be slaying enemies with this thing. Sickle, another light pen. It's probably still our top performing like light pen assault rifle, infinite ammo, good target acquisition. Obviously now it has lower damage than the rest of the ARs, but that's like balanced, and it has like good damage over time components to it, just because you always have a little bit of charge left. And you do have some backup mags if you want to just reload and just keep firing. And it's currently reacting to the mouse. Tenderizer is our other like top performing light pen assault rifle. They recently gave it a larger magazine, and they gave it a faster fire rate. Strong. Highly recommend giving it a try. I do enjoy using it quite a bit. Yeah, I don't know what else to say other than, just make sure you have good target acquisition. Some people won't like it against like a Brood or like a Brood Commander or something like that, or Hive Guardian, because you have to be a little more accurate with it. But I still think the stopping power of it versus like the vast majority of the Tyranids is really good. it'll fall short in some categories, such as like a ball spewer, but hopefully you have other parts of your loadout that can deal with it. Scythe, straight up there, right next to the sickle. Very good since they updated to more reliably set things on fire. Really good fire time, cools down a lot faster. Highly recommend giving it a try if you haven't already. Very good spot. Very good spot. Very good spot. At sometimes I prefer it over the sickle just because you're lighting the bigger enemies on fire. But there are times where I also prefer the sickle just because it has a little more impact to it. All right. Liberator, solid B. You know, it tends to stick around that B tier. You know, they've been updating it to keep it on par with other like good weapons. Not great, but good. Solid. Not much more to say about it, honestly. Defender, more or less very similar weapon stats. Defender in some ways is better. Liberator is some ways another better because you have like the scope and stuff like that. Better muzzle velocity. But the Defender is a really good option if you're looking for a one-handed weapon. And yeah, and they recently gave it a little more damage to differentiate it from the Pummeler. Okay. Next we got the Pummeler. I would put it like just below and maybe give or take on the Defender. Like I think depending on the person, you'll prefer the Pummeler for a little more CC, taking out those stalkers, right? A stalker runs up on you. You can kind of just stun lock them and go for the head, pushing back some enemies, you know, more or less similar to the Liberator Concussive, but you're going to start to notice like the damage difference between the two now that they've increased it. Highly recommend still trying the Pummeler, and especially if you want that one-handed weapon. Unfortunately, the new SMG, the Reprimand, does not go one-handed, but I still think it's a very, very good weapon. I recommend trying to crouch with it because it has a lot of recoil, and I've been using actually in semi-automatic and just like tap firing. It has a ton of stopping power at 125, good durable damage, medium pen, all good things. The main issue at this point is just like a lot of people I think are like spraying it in full auto, wasting a lot of shots, and then they're finding that the magazine is too small, and then also it has too much recoil. But I'm telling you, if you put it in single fire and like tap fire it, or just like burst fire it more at like enemies, it will be a lot more enjoyable for you to use, and it actually is very good in situations. The weapon at one of the biggest downsides is it has a lot of spread to it, and unfortunately that will affect how good it is at like, you know, 75 plus meters. But luckily in tiered missions, you're typically not shooting at things that far away, so it won't be, you know, as much of a negative as like other weapons. The Knight, I've actually been enjoying more so than actually the normal Defender. I put it in burst fire and just like burst fire like a lot of enemies to death. Quite good overall. Full auto, you're going to go through the ammo a little too fast in my opinion, but I do think that if you put it in burst fire and you're like being fairly accurate with it, it can slay out. It has its moments. Obviously it's light pen, so that will affect, you know, its killing ability, but you know, I still think it's quite good. Stim pistol, a little bit of a niche weapon. I find that it's not as good in my bug missions than my bot missions. I found in bot missions it was a little more useful because you would like take a shot from an automaton at long distance and a teammate could just stim you back up. But in bugs, everybody's more mobile. It's harder to hit your shots with it. I think it's a little bit more of a meme choice when it comes to bug missions for that reason. Peacemaker, I think is just being outclassed by a lot of the other pistols at the moment. It does make no noise, which is nice for like those stealth loadouts. But I think in most situations, I would probably recommend using another pistol. Similar to like the Verdict. I think the Verdict is in a very solid spot now that it is medium pen. Medium pen with that amount of damage, it actually fires the same round as the Reprimand. So kind of putting them close together for that reason. Really good. Small magazine on the Verdict, but you know, well-placed shots. I think it performs really well against like Hive Guardians and Brute Commanders and, you know, even the occasional Bile Spear and stuff like that. Quite good. The utility of the Crisper, I think, is always really high, especially on bug missions. You can use this to great effect. It has the same like weapon stats as the Torture, but obviously just a smaller magazine. Same distance of like flame traveled, you know, same damage and everything like that. It just doesn't have magazine capacity. Really strong, like sidearm to like lay traps out and just like kill enemies with it. If you're looking for something that like runs well, and you want to bring like a flamethrower, but you don't want to sacrifice your support weapon or your primary slot, this is a good one. All right. Bushwhacker, always a solid option, I think, for bug missions. Doesn't quite have the same killing capacity as a lot of other ones, but it's like a good sidearm to like just to kind of lean on if you're looking for something that has like some stopping power, some stagger. Senator is, you know, I still think it's good with its new like AP4. I'm going to quickly preface that. I still think it's like really good, but I'm not going to be putting it nearly as high as the other like sidearms. Just because the AP4 doesn't really come into its own nearly as much in bugs. It's not like it's like 3-tapping a charger in its leg. It takes a lot more shots to kill a charger with the center and like, or kill a Bile Titan or something along those lines. It just typically just is not worth it like on this front. It's still a very good weapon for like if you're taking out like a Hive Guardian or a Brood Commander or, you know, Battle Spirit. Having that like higher pen gives you like that greater damage. You're not getting the 65% damage, you're getting the full 100% versus those medium pen targets. So, or medium armor targets. But yeah. Redeemer, still in like a fairly good spot. I want to put that like right next to Normal Liberator. If you're looking for it to, if you find like it's like firing too fast, you can always change the fire rate down to like single shot, and it's basically just still a better Peacemaker in my opinion. Still good. Highly recommend. Not much more to say. Nothing really has happened to it. Grenade Pistol, I still think is like one of the top tier options for the bot front, or bug front, sorry. So much utility in it. Really good versus spewers. Just very good killing ability, and it just has high utility. Just a really, really solid option. Dagger, I'm going to put in like A+. It doesn't quite have the pen of like other things. It doesn't have quite the utility that the Grenade Pistol has, but man, does it slay out. It's really good, especially if you light an enemy on fire, and it's like my go-to like sidearm at the moment, just because you have so much fire time now, and it does like good damage during that fire time that, you know, I can't stop using it at times. I really enjoy it. If I'm not using the Grenade Pistol, I'm tend to use the Dagger. Really, really good weapon. Loyalist, I'm going to put like somewhere close to the other like pistols. I am debating maybe putting it in B tier. It's nice that it is the Purifier, just a baby version of it. It does almost the same amount of damage, but its ammo economy is really suffering for it. You only get 4 backup magazines, and each magazine has 7 rounds. So it basically means you have to charge shot on it. And personally, when I'm using my sidearm, I tend to use it in more of like a panicked situation, whereas my primary weapon is like out of ammo, or I don't have time to reload, or I'm like something along those lines. Swapping to the Loyalist, it's not really a good panicked weapon. You have to use it with more deliberate force. Like a horde of enemies is coming towards you, you swap to it and you start charging, because you basically have to charge it, or else the weapon will feel like you go through your ammo in like 0.2 of a second, right? And the non-charged shots are just usually not worth it. So for that reason, I think I'm going to put it in B tier for now. I think if they gave it another magazine or 2 in reserve, I think it immediately goes up to A tier. And if they gave it even more, maybe even go up to S, maybe. But in its current state, I think B tier would be quite a fair assessment for it. Throwing knife, I think is pretty meme worthy at the moment. I mean, you have 20 of them now, which is cool. And you can kind of just throw them out willy-nilly and they do a decent amount of damage. I just think that they're like very situational, and you're more or less doing like a particular loadout and you're just trying to have fun. There's just so much utility in other grenades, and you just get so much more killing ability and potential with other nades that at the moment I can't necessarily recommend using the throwing knives. Maybe it's being a little too harsh. Maybe it deserves to be a little higher, but yeah. Incendiary Impact, I think, is like a solid B tier, B+. The immediacy of it and the fire lingering is fairly good. I just wish the fire lasted a little longer. We have a bunch of fire stratagems that the fire lasts a hell of a lot longer than the incendiary grenades, and incendiary grenades just tend to not last that long. So you're giving up a lot of explosive damage just for a little bit of lingering fire, which is nice, but I'd rather just use something else. They recently increased the incendiary damage, like the regular grenades explosion damage, which is nice. I think it's about double the incendiary damage, or the incendiary impact, but it's not that much, and it still feels like it's kind of lackluster. It balances it better against its cousin, the impact, but not much against the other ones. Thermite obviously goes right up to S tier. It's absolutely insane for certain builds where you don't have like a lot of like heavy killing potential. So no surprise, it goes all the way up there. One tapping chargers very easily, and taking care of ball titans with 1-2 throws. Very good. Highly recommend. Stun grenade, I think, is like an A tier. Still really enjoy using it, but I do think that the gas grenade has kind of like replaced it in some regard. I think the gas grenade is an absolute banger choice for bugs, throwing out a bug hole, and just it lasts so long. Really good CC, good damage, and just like it affects a lot of enemies. Really good alternative to the thermite if you don't want to, if you already have an AT weapon, let's say, and you need something for ad clear. Like if I'm bringing the recoils, I don't need thermites. I just bring gas. It's really good. Highly recommend. Impact has been like dropping a little bit in my opinion. Now that they've been buffing like a lot of the other like grenades up, and we've been getting like gas and so on and so forth. Because like now the high explosive does 800 damage versus the impact's 400, but the high explosive still has a really long fuse time. So if you need to manage that and think about that, maybe the impact's better for you. I still think they're like good grenades, and I'd still recommend them, but they're definitely like failing to find the potential of like more utility based nades, or like the like more specific niche nades like a thermite. Just a quick thing for the thermite that I forgot to mention. The thermite flies at an angle, and it like leans to the left. So if you throw your thermite to the right of an enemy, it will stick more reliably. Because the reason why it doesn't stick sometimes, you might be like, why is it not doing that? It's because the handle is the thing hitting the charger or whatever, and it's bouncing away. So if you aim to the right of an enemy while it's leaning to the left, you're more likely to get the spikes to stick into it. Quick tip of that. All right, smoke all the way down to D tier. I do not recommend bringing smoke still. It's getting better, and enemies are like losing you a little bit more often, but I still want more smoke grenades and larger radius to be more effective. Frag grenade, I have a problem with it. Just like, yes, you get one additional nade, but it's not that useful, especially since they've been buffing the other things around it. I'm going to put it like B tier. It's fairly good. It's about as useful as like other incendiary grenades. I do like having the one bonus, but it just still needs more. I think the shrapnel damage in general is not really that stellar at the moment. So it makes me like not love bringing it in all situations. You know, maybe if they gave it like one extra grenade, so you get like 6 or something like that by default, or like maybe they gave it more shrapnel damage, I would like it. That shrapnel damage would also help the eruptors, so maybe arrowhead. Okay, so that's the tier list as it sits right now. Is there anything I'd like to change? Maybe Punisher coming down to B+ tier now that we have the halt. That really does kind of like replace it. You know, I could absolutely see that being a thing. Bushwhacker could come down as well because it is just light pen, but I think the CC of the Bushwhacker kind of keeps it up there. Is there anything else I'd like to change? Maybe Sickle coming down a little bit more. I do think the Scythe is the better alternative versus the Sickle now, that like the Scythe has so many buffs to it. Anything else I want to change? I feel pretty confident where things are lying. I think the only thing I think, you know, now that I see how everything's fitting on the board, Punisher comes down a little bit after that. Overall, I think the balance of the primaries and secondaries and grenades is fairly good. I would like to see more things move towards the A tier. Remember, S tier is more or less the weapons that are like overperforming compared to a lot of weapons. They're outright slaying the competition in terms of like killing ability or utility and stuff like that. A tier is where I want to see most things end up lying. They're great picks. They don't have that many downsides. They may have 1 or 2 downsides, maybe not enough pen or like maybe not quite enough ammo, but they're like really strong. B tier is like good, but I almost feel like there's like positives and negatives that are fairly equal on the weapon. You know, they're not quite as good as their A tier, but, you know, still doing quite well. C tier are underperformers, in my opinion, things that, you know, could definitely use a little bit of a bump. They're not too far from being in a good spot. And then D tier are absolutely underperforming. I feel like they need something more to them, either a redesign or just even giving them more. So, yeah, that's my tier list here. If you guys liked it, consider giving a like and a comment. Comment down below, like, what are you guys using? Did I get something wrong? Am I overvaluing? Am I undervaluing something? Let me know. We do these live, so come by Twitch stream. I stream every day other than Mondays, early morning. We're on for every single update and Warbond release. So if you're ever wondering, they do release at 5 a.m. EST, and I'm always live testing things and giving my opinion on them and unlocking Warbonds as soon as possible. Yeah, we always have a great time, so do consider coming by when there's an update. We have a Discord link down below as well if you want to get in contact with me or just talk about the game. We have a big community over there. We have an LFG. You guys can join. And yeah, take care, YouTube. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.